Ladies and gentlemen, this is the PB Podcast, Pushing Boundaries, welcomes you to another edition. This is number 31. We are off and rolling. We got, Thanksgiving seems so far away, guys. I know it was only 8 days ago, but it seems like an eternity. First things first, Pushing Boundaries hopes that everyone is staying safe all across the country. We want everyone to, be safe out there. All our educators, administrators, our friends, family, everybody, just make sure you're staying safe, doing what you need to do to protect yourself. Sanitizer, hand washing, the social distancing, everything. I've never washed my hands or sanitized them so much in my life in the last 9 months. I'm very familiar with Bed Bath and Body Works. I really don't think I need to be, but I am. So first things first, a little piece of business, Pushing Boundaries, pushboundconsulting.com is an educational firm. We specialize in professional development for your school. We're our one-stop shop for professional development, publishing book publishing, all sorts of things. So if you're an administrator, superintendent, teacher, and you guys know that you're in search of some type of personalized personalized professional development, that's a lot of words. If you're in search of that, please contact us at pushboundconsulting.com. Have team of 16 to 20 people. We're, pretty much our specialties range from everything you want, from depth of knowledge to student voice to everything that's going on in virtual learning today. So definitely we're the ones that you want to come see and talk to about getting that professional development personalized for your school, for your district, for your educators. So today on the show, very, very excited about this one particular guest in my research, Dr. Erik Youngman. Basically advocate for homework growth mindset, remote learning, grading. He has a book out that I definitely want to talk about, the 12 ways of deliberate homework. So definitely Dr. Erik Youngman. How are you, sir? How are you doing today?
I'm awesome. I'm trying to be flexible and creative during these challenging times.
So as we start, first of all, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. For anyone who are either listening or watching today, who is Dr. Erik Youngman? How did you get started in this crazy world called education? And give us some background on who you are.
Well, thanks for having me. Probably pertinent to this conversation is I've been married for 20 years to a speech pathologist. I'm a father of 3 daughters, Annika, Tessa, and Fiona. They're in 5th, 7th, and 9th grade. And I mention all that especially because I think it gives me a great perspective when I'm talking about concepts like homework and growth mindset as I'm working with my daughters as their athletes and to support them academically. I think that really has shaped me where I have a different perspective. This is my 24th year in education. I was a first grade teacher for 4 years, an assistant principal for 4 years, a principal for 8 years, and this is my 8th year as director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment in Libertyville, which is in Illinois. I'm very passionate about talking and writing and presenting about topics such as homework and growth mindset. I have a book that came out a couple months ago, 12 Characteristics of Deliberate Homework, and that's been a great platform for me to talk. And really, I'm just trying to focus on how can I empower that reasonable and meaningful homework. And when I created the book, it's also created a lot of opportunities to talk with other educators, to collaborate with other books and join other podcasts. So I think my experience and now the book has created some tremendous opportunities. Lately, I've been writing a lot about growth mindset. So I have some blogs out on Teach Better because when I talk about growth mindset, it really helps me where I'm talking about how can I support athletes, teachers, and students, because all of us are encountering so many changes. So I think growth mindset is a pertinent topic that can help all of us.
So just for the cheap plug, because he wanted to put himself in there, Dr. Rick Jetter wants to say hello. So, and he is giving you his props, sir. I mean, if Dr. Rick Jetter says you're brilliant, sir, that says something. He never tells me that. And I do this show for him. Gosh darn it.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, he had a great concept for a book. So I offered to write one of the chapters, and now I submitted that already. So I'm anxious to see what that final project looks like.
Oh yes, definitely. We will. Pushing Boundaries will change the game. I have chapter 2 I don't know. Do you remember which chapter you are, sir?
Chapter 13.
13. It's going to be something we can't really talk about it much in detail, but when it does hit, it's going to be big. It's going to be a big thing. So Dr. Erik Youngman is actually somebody who's very local to me. So he is literally within shopping distance of my home. I am a frequenter of, he lives in Gurnee, Illinois, which is right by where I teach, and I live in Volo, and he works at Libertyville. And so I didn't realize that we were very local. So definitely sometime soon, I would love to say, hey, let's go get a cup of coffee and sometime soon and chat about education and everything. So my big thing talking about this book and looking at this book and seeing what you have put together, we all know what homework is, but when it comes to your book and what you're trying to put forth, what is deliberate homework?
My focus is on connecting homework, and right now, because it's remote learning, independent practice. And so when I've submitted presentation proposals for conferences, I'm connecting both of those. And I think that's pertinent for the listeners as well. You can think of homework, but it's kind of difficult to sell a book during a pandemic. But I think if you think of it as it's independent practice, you can use those same strategies. So when I talk about deliberate homework, I try to simplify everything. So I really focus on homework being reasonable, meaningful, and informative. And when we talk about reasonable, it needs to be reasonable completion time, complexity, and frequency. Right there, if someone is off the mark in that, students are going to have too much homework, and it's not going to be helpful to anyone, including the family. The next component is meaningful homework. It needs to have a meaningful purpose, meaningful learning targets, meaningful learning mindset, format, and sequence. And I can elaborate on all of those, but those are the ones that I focus the most on when I'm talking with other educators. For informative, that includes informative communication. What type of communication for that homework would happen before, during, and after? Feedback is a second component, and finally, grading criteria. And the last part is consistent. And for me, I really talk about implementation. But if you have one teacher in your school district and they're assigning deliberate homework, that's terrific. But if that teacher is also teaching other students and 2 or 3 of those teachers are providing 1 hour of homework every night, that student and family is going to be overwhelmed. So consistency is that implementation. What does it look like for a grade level, for a school district? So those are the aspects. I can drill down to any one of those. But when I'm doing presentations with local school districts and at conferences, I really focus a lot of my time initially on reasonable. And then we build in and go more depth into meaningful aspects.
So when you speak of reasonable, I mean, obviously applying to, like for myself, history or a science teacher or a math teacher, when you talk reasonable, could you elaborate on that for people who might not be in education, who want to tune in? Like, what would be reasonable homework for a student? Because we have parents sometimes that tune in that want to listen to educators and boundary pushers talk about this stuff. What would be reasonable for a student?
Well, if we're talking about completion time, you have to understand how much time all of your students are spending on homework. You have to be cognizant if one student is taking 3 minutes, but your struggling learners are taking an hour. So you have to understand what's the completion time for all your students. Same with complexity. How can the inequity of homework for certain students empower changes for all students? If you have 4 students that are really struggling with your homework, you need to make a change with it. And then finally, when we're talking about frequency, how many days a week are you assigning homework? I talk a lot about being cognizant of not assigning homework on holidays or on weekends. We need to give students a break. But when I talk with different educators, how many times a week do you assign homework? They're going to have different responses. My direct answer to reasonable homework would be a few days a week where you provide multiple days to finish and you provide the students with choice. A parent organization did provide some guidance where it was a maximum of 10 minutes per grade level. But some people have just taken that quote out of context and they're thinking, well, at least 10 minutes at each grade level. So again, when I'm thinking through homework and I talk with educators of the middle school and high school, you definitely have to collaborate with your peers because you have to think of how much total homework is that student getting. I put a tweet out last night, and it's in a future presentation, where I encourage educators to be cognizant of the cumulative impact of how much homework they assign. My seventh grader said, "Oh, all my teachers are saying, have a great day, and they're assigning homework." Well, yesterday, one of the teachers assigned her an hour and a half worth of homework. Well, as the other teachers also assigned homework, it's kind of hard to have a nice day when you're going through remote learning for the entire day, and then you have 2 hours of homework.
Yeah, it's even at, 2 hours. I mean, even at the high school level, I mean, I might assign something that could be 30 minutes, but I've been catching wind of other departments that have signed like hour, 2 hour assignments and stuff. And it's just getting to a point where you're not getting the things back. Now, when it comes to homework and remote learning, now in a normal setting, I would have, a completion rate maybe around 80, 85%. And I would be happy with that. Now, when it comes to remote learning and homework, recently we've been seeing a sharp decline when it comes to completion rate or turning things in. Now, when it comes to remote learning, how would you curve your approach to deliberate homework when it comes to remote learning versus an in-person scenario?
I mean, I really just think it needs to be meaningful, occasional, and concise. So, what can you do for practice that is just one or two questions? What are some higher level questions you can ask? What are some exit tickets you can ask? How can you flip learning? If you have some students experiencing synchronous instruction or in person, what can they do during the asynchronous time that is independent? They can read, and then you can build on that during the live conversation and add the higher level questions during that live time. So I think it's really just being more meaningful of what type of work. But again, I think concise. I think if you can offer multiple nights, my daughters are way over involved in sports, soccer, basketball, and golf. But at the same time, if you gave the students 2 days to complete it, that gives them some flexibility. Typically, the feedback I hear is the longer you give the student to complete the homework, they still just procrastinate and don't get it done. However, if you're giving them a choice, same with math, if you can differentiate it to some way based on the guided practice within the classroom, students who struggled, maybe they just do 3 practice problems. Students who get it do 2 practice problems that are at their level. And then finally, the students who are beyond it and need a challenge, you provide that opportunity. One of the examples that I give in the book is just about how you can be really focused on when in the learning you provide the homework. Because sometimes I think you always give the students who are struggling lower level questions. So, how can we give the same questions to all of our learners? I know when I was previously talking with you, you talked about how you teach different levels of history to different types of kids. So, one thing you could do is focus on a homework that is pertinent for the pre learning. What skills, what background knowledge can they gather for everyone? What different learning could you then assign during the learning? What could you then assign for practice? And then everyone at the end, how could you give them opportunities to apply? How can they all create? How can they critique? How can they explore? How can they all make connections? Because again, I think we have to think of all of our students. We have to challenge all of them. It doesn't matter what class they're in. I really encourage all educators to think of maybe where they are in the learning process, because that may make it a little bit easier.
Excellent. I mean, definitely, these are things that I've been just in my mind and in my own classroom. I'm just getting into personalized learning to give my students a choice in their work, of what avenue they want to demonstrate their learning, and things like that. And when you bring choice into it, it just, for teachers, educators, listen to me, give them their choice, because if you have choice, it brings it from here. The engagement goes because you're allowing them to choose their pathway. And if they're still showing their learning and showing that they're attaining the objective for that day, we're still doing our job. I mean, and, Eric, what do you think? I mean, is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely. Just like a parent, I mean, you can give them only 2 or 3 choices and you want them both done, set the table or vacuum, but let them choose which one. And you can modify it the next time, give them different choices. But anytime you can empower that agency and self direction, I think it's really going to empower where they're really curious and engaged.
Definitely, definitely. Now, when it comes to remote learning, and I'm going to parlay grading into this as well, how do you feel education as a whole has handled remote learning during this time frame? And I'll put wherever you want to put grading into it as well. But how do you think that we've done it, and as educators, as administrators, as curriculum leader, everything? How have we handled this so far?
I mean, first of all, thank you to all the educators that are out there, and hopefully all the parents are being understanding. If I just focus on Illinois, the state decided how we were going to grade during the spring, and they basically said we're not going to grade. It's going to be a pass-fail situation. And then now we were asked to grade, and I think now we're just applying and focusing what we're asked to do. But I think within there, again, we need to be empathetic. We need to be cognizant of which students are at home um, watching their younger students. So again, I think my focus is mostly on feedback. How can you provide feedback during the learning process? How can you empower self-assessment? How can you empower reflection? You really need to stop penalizing students. You can't be assigning zeros that will kill their grade. Um, there's been a lot of discussion about should students have retry opportunities. I think my focus is on making sure that you provide multiple opportunities for each learning standard that you want to grade, and then you can base the grade on that. But I think the more you can provide immediate feedback and empower the student to revise and reflect about their work, I think they're going to learn it better. I think different educators are out there talking about people always just focusing on earning points. That was me. I was a straight 8 student. I just wanted the A. I didn't really care about my learning. Now I love learning. I know you're a history teacher. I'll walk into classrooms in Libertyville, and I love listening to the middle school teachers talk about science and history. I just want to learn now. So how can we empower that in students where, again, that grade is feedback, but it empowers that reflection? And I think in the area where you want to land is self-assessment. If you can provide that criteria that the student understands, they may be even more harsh on themselves than you are, but they're cognizant of what the expectations are. They self-assess and they continue to make progress. So my dissertation was on standards-based grading. So I've read a lot about it. I read so much about it. I love what Tom Guskey focuses on. And now the last couple of years, I've started to focus on different topics. But grading, just like homework, is a topic that people are very passionate about, and they have strong opinions because as students, they've experienced grading and homework, and they can tell teachers or want to tell teachers and other people, how it can be improved.
Yeah, they do not hold back when they want to tell us how we want to improve. It's like, Mr. Knowles, can you look at this again? It's like, what do you want me to do? Now, I'm glad you brought up the Illinois thing. How in the beginning we were asked, it was just a pass fail, and then we were told to start making the grades count, and it wasn't a pass fail anymore. Do you think that hurt us at all? I mean, I'm just talking as a teacher from a teacher standpoint. Do you think that hurt us at all, coming from the spring to the fall and getting the kids more motivated for their grades? Did that hurt us? Did that help us? What do you think?
I think it's a challenge based on the student, the school, the teacher, the school district. I think overall for elementary, I think it's helpful that the state basically told us what to do because parents had strong opinions about it. I know my daughters are diligent learners, but at the same time, if there wasn't a grade in the spring, they probably didn't work quite as hard as they could have.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm fine. The spring was 2 months. Moving forward, now I'm glad that we do have grades. It does provide some different conversations as I'm talking with my physical education teachers, where now if they're teaching asynchronous work, their grades might look a little bit different now. So I think grading in general, again, if we can use it as feedback to empower reflection, and it's not penalizing students, I think it's fine. I think it is needed, really just to focus on that ownership and accountability because some of the middle school and high school teachers, that's what they thought was lacking when there was not a grade. And some of the parents too. But again, we need to be cognizant where we're not penalizing these students with failing grades. We need to figure out what is their situation, how can we help them more, how can we support these students because families are really struggling at these times. You don't know what they're going through. Same with the teachers, same with the administrators. So we need to be thoughtful of grading and really have conversations.
Now there are some advocates out there that think that we need to lose homework altogether in the classroom. Being an advocate of deliberate homework, how do you feel about that?
They need to read my book. They need to read my book. It's funny. I mean, in the end, my school district wanted to create some homework belief statements. And so I started doing some homework, and I was tweeting some different things, and I would be watching my daughters play soccer, and people would be coming back at me at Twitter, because I basically was saying, let's reduce the amount of homework. But at the same time, I don't think you can be at all or nothing. I think some people are saying, let's mandate it nightly. Well, then it's not going to be meaningful. Some people are saying, get rid of it. And I think that's where I go with meaningful, reasonable, flexible, concise homework. I think you need to have it in some capacity. One of my examples in the book talks about middle schools and high schools where you could have assessments on different days. Friday could only be history assessments, which mean only Thursday night could be history homework. Thursday might only be science assessments, which means Wednesday night is the only night of homework. So that's very rigid. But I think when you're talking about empowering students and you want to encourage that reflection, homework doesn't have to be 32 math questions, just the odd numbers. It could be, what's a reflection? What's a goal? What's some goal setting? So I try to provide some opportunities of different meaningful homework examples, because I do think it needs to be deliberate. But I do not think the answer is get rid of it. And I don't think the answer is mandate it daily. Again, a few days a week. I think that will help kids reflect and, understand what they're learning, because, think about math. You need to practice that skill. Think about when you're studying some of these topics in history, you need to reflect about it. Even if homework is just making connections, the final project is being creative. I think there's ways to do it. But again, people are very passionate about the topic.
Definitely. That's why I wanted to bring it in there, because I know there's so many books out there and there's so many blogs and social media and things that saying we got to lose homework, we got to keep homework, we got to make homework this, you got to make homework that. I'm just like, I got the guy with the homework book. I was like, I can ask him directly. So
my focus, make it meaningful and reasonable.
Definitely. So transitioning into one thing that I know you're very passionate about, and one thing I wanted to talk about, growth mindset. So how important is growth mindset in our current state of education?
I think in the end, we need to focus on resiliency, flexibility, and a growth mindset. I think all of the teachers, they're having to be resilient and creative, as we keep changing between hybrid and remote learning and the different expectations and all the technology they need to learn. Parents need to be resilient, and they need to show empathy as they're supporting their students and supporting the school district. Students need to be creative and resilient as they're trying this new setting and still trying to connect with others. So I say a lot of different things about it. I mean, lately I've been saying commit with focus and grit. I've been working with different companies. Knowledge Hook is an online math company, and lately Beluga, they're another online company where I'm just trying to really focus on different aspects of growth mindset. Lately, some of my presentations have focused on empowering ownership and self-direction. So one of our focuses in Libertyville District 70 is self-direction. But what does that mean? Students need to be able to problem solve. They need to be able to make choices and reflect. So I think that's a great component. And the other part is, what happens when you make a mistake, or if you don't experience success yet? I really talk a lot about the power of yet. And my daughters don't listen to everything that I say, but it's pretty awesome when they start to say, oh, I need to be resilient, when they start to repeat some of those words. But I think the power of yet is awesome, where I'm learning a new skill. Right now, I'm taking down some cupboard doors so they can get painted. And my daughters and I were talking through the situation, and they're kind of echoing what I'm saying. My daughter's outside shooting baskets. My other daughter's learning soccer. And again, we just keep talking about that because you're learning this new skill. You're trying to focus on the positives. You're trying to reflect and make adjustments. So, really that self-direction, that learning from mistakes, and that resiliency, I think, are just the good components that can help everyone in life.
Max, and that yet is a big thing. And I do sympathize, sir. I have 4 girls. I have 4 girls, so I know the pain. So it's like you say 3. I'm just like, man, what would happen if I just had 3? Would I be like the gray hair go away or anything? Because I don't have gray up here. I have more gray here. But trust me, they're a blessing. They're wonderful. They're awesome. But 4 girls, education, pandemic, everything else. I just need this to end. I really need this to end. So last question, because I always like to keep my mindful of everyone's time, not in education, but just in general. And it's been a question I've been asking students, and I think it's an interesting question because it touches on what we're going through right now. We have word of a vaccine possibly coming out for COVID sometime in the next 2, 3, 1 month, 6 months, whatever the case may be. If there was a vaccine, would you take it, sir?
I wasn't expecting that question, but absolutely. I mean, if it's tested, I think my biggest focus is on, what information is it out there for students. I think I'll trust people. I think the biggest thing when we're talking about getting schools open, if we make that a priority, we need to figure out what other things can or cannot happen. But again, I think it's in the news a lot. That's a very direct question. I would take it. But again, I really would want to do the research to make sure it's good for kids as well.
I wanted just to bring that up because I always throw one question that's a little bit outside of education, but really deals with what's going on, because I've gotten so many different unique answers to that from students. And it goes to show that they pay attention, they listen, and they know what's going on around us. And I think a lot of educators don't realize the fact that they are very smart. Our students are very smart, and they know what's going on. Because I had one student gave me the best answer I've heard all week. Like, my parents want to research it for 3 months to make sure it works, and then we'll take it. I'm just like, that's my logic of buying a new iPhone. Like, when I go to buy a new iPhone, I wait for the second, third run. They get all the kinks out of it. And I'm just like, that's amazing. Like, that's the logic I get for buying a new Apple device. It's amazing. And I was just like, that is something that I think is worth noting, that even in these times, like, the kids are growing, the kids are getting those things that are needed to get to that next level. And I think, we just have to spend the time and doing everything that you're talking about, the deliberate homework, focusing on growth mindset, grading properly, the grading strategies that go along with it as well.
Yeah, I like to talk about empathy a lot because, again, with that question about the vaccine, with a lot of things, with the wearing the mask that you were talking about earlier too, it's not just for yourself. What can you do to help your community and state and nation as well?
Definitely. Dr. Youngman, your book, social media, anything you want to promote out there that you got going on right now?
I'm very active on Twitter, so look me up at Erik_Youngman. That's Erik with a K. I'll tweet about anything. I love learning about other school districts and teachers within the United States and other countries, because I like to see what people are learning about. I love to share. So very active on Twitter.
Excellent. Dr. Youngman, thank you for spending time with us this week and sharing your ideas and everything. We look forward to talking with you soon. And then definitely reading your chapter in our new chapter 1, or the 100 series book that should be coming out in the next some odd months, or we'll just call it that. So we appreciate you, Dr. Youngman. Please be safe to you and your family. Have a good holiday season, and we'll be talking soon. Everyone here at Pushing Boundaries, we want to say, keep it up, guys. Educators, you're doing awesome. Keep fortifying, keep moving forward, keep trying to reach those kids, push the boundaries of your classroom, whether they're virtual or in virtual classrooms or in school buildings. And just remember, we're here for our students. Dr. Youngman, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.